Remove Before Flight by Scott Shuttleman Phillips, memoir of a space shuttle team member, with Diane Phillips. To all of my shuttle team members for recognizing and sharing in my vision. To my soulmate and loving wife Diane for giving voice to my story. To Christian and Tyler for your enthusiasm and support. To my father Dick Phillips and my brother Steve Phillips. Forward. Scott Phillips' book, Removed Before Flight, is one that offers a different view of the space shuttle program than anything you are likely to have read by anyone else involved in America's space program. This is not a memoir by an astronaut, a flight controller, or senior engineer or manager. Instead, it is a view of the program as seen by one of the guys on the ground, someone who spent 30 years inside the program, helping to carry out the day-to-day work to assemble, prepare, and launch the incredibly complex and sophisticated machine that we knew as the Space Shuttle. Seen from afar, the shuttle was so beautiful and flew so gracefully that onlookers could easily forget that it was a 6 million pound brute of a machine, a massive industrial equipment requiring thousands of people to service and launch. Those who managed this over the 3 decades of the shuttle program were the greatest workforce in American history, maintaining heavy, sometimes dangerous equipment, toxic propellants, and incredibly fragile instruments and systems, often from precarious positions or in confined spaces. And they had to do it exactly right, for human life was at stake, both on the ground and in space, in the most public manner possible. Scott Phillips was one of those people, and this is his story. It is told movingly and well, with the humility that comes from knowing that he was just one of many thousands involved in the launch of each space shuttle, but also with the pride that comes from knowing that he was, in fact, one of those thousands. Michael D. Griffin, NASA Administrator, 2005 to 2009. Top Amazon reviews from the United States for Remove Before Flight. TP of Rhode Island gave it 5 out of 5 stars. And they say, Remove Before Flight is truly an enjoyable and illuminating read, not just for the space aficionado, but for everyone. It's an incredible story about a young boy, inspired as he watched astronaut Neil Armstrong become the first human to step foot on the moon. On that day, July 20th, 1969, over 500 million people around the world were awestruck by mankind's most monumental achievement. This event became the defining moment for Scott as he realized his lifelong dream to be part of something important, larger than himself. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we have liftoff.
She's gonna calculate my numbers. She's gonna seal my fate. I've got a date with the sky and then the moon, and I can't be late. I'm a young fighter jet pilot, damn near back from the war. I'd like to race my Corvette and push the envelope just a...
Remove Before Flight. Prologue. Mudman. I was working as a mechanical technician performing critical pre-flight testing on the Space Shuttle's external liquid oxygen tank designed to hold over 143 gallons of fuel at launch. Months earlier, our team had installed stamp-size measuring instrumentation called strain gauges. On this day in September 1979, our task was to conduct stress analysis on the tank to verify that the weld seams would hold the fuel during the shuttle's fiery ascent. NASA decided to use barium sulfate, driller's mud, to simulate the 1.3 million pounds of liquid oxygen. After verifying the integrity of the tank, we had to drain the mud and clean the residue off the walls. To do this, the Bendix Corporation had created a 36-inch diameter platform called a man tube, which rotated 360 degrees on a thin cable system to lower a person in a standing position through the top of the liquid oxygen manhole with a high-pressure water hose to spray the walls. The man tube was hooked at the top by a winch cable that was manually lowered incrementally as the walls were cleaned. Because it was in a confined space, this undertaking was extremely dangerous and required tank entry certification. The man tube had never been previously tested with an actual person. This was our first attempt, and because I was the youngest, at 20 years old, thinnest, and looking back perhaps the most naive member of the team, I was selected to be the guinea pig. We were working the night shift, so the on-site safety personnel were slim, but we naturally assumed the tube would work as designed. I donned the waterproof white hooded suit, which included a built-in breathing apparatus that provided enough oxygen for my 5-hour mission, and a pair of rubber gloves. I felt like an astronaut anticipating his first mission, and I was excited to perform my first solo task. As I looked down between my feet through the metal grate into the tank, it was daunting knowing that there was only one way in and one way out. I quickly tried to purge myself of any thought of claustrophobia or fear of falling into the cave-like tank. As my team members cranked me down the dark abyss, I had the eerie feeling of being in a casket. I was dropped 10 feet at a time as I dangled in the man tube by one thin cable, and flood lamps overhead created tremendous heat. The darkness finally eased as the floodlights filtered through the manhole, illuminating the tank. The combination of heat and blinding glare reflecting off the shiny aluminum tank walls, the portion that had not been covered with mud, caused me to become disoriented. I didn't know which way was up or down. The pulsating hose was activated, and I began to blast the tank walls. The intense pressure caused the tank to reverberate, dramatically increasing the noise level. Without hearing protection, my fatigue accelerated, and communication with my team was compromised. As I completed my first dizzying 360-degree rotation, mud splattered onto my face shield, and I was soon completely covered in the heavy sludge. About 45 minutes into the process, at about 40 feet down, the air hose popped off of my suit. This horrifying revelation was confirmed when I heard the spring clip hit the bottom of the tank with a loud clink. By then, I was already overheated and exhausted from the noise and struggling with the force from the hose. I was fighting a nauseating, spinning sensation. When I lost air pressure, my face shield instantly fogged over, distorting my vision. I desperately gasped for air. Instinctively, I grabbed my walkie-talkie. "Get me the hell out now," I screamed. "I've lost my air supply. We need to abort." The agonizingly slow process began as my team had to hand-crank the winch to bring me back up. I had lost track of how far down I was, and I tried to determine how far I had to go. As I cleared a small patch on the interior of my shield with my tongue, I looked up at the narrow passage above. I was alarmed that the manhole cover appeared to be about the size of a dime. With a limited oxygen supply, I intuitively knew to maintain shallow breathing. I had to leave my hood on, but thankfully my certification training had taught me not to panic in a confined environment. I tried to keep my thoughts positive and focused, and I slowly reviewed the details of the operation. I ascertained that the mud had lubricated the spring clip on the air hose, causing it to pop off. When I finally emerged, I was covered from head to toe in mud. I was reeling and lightheaded, but elated to draw in the fresh air. It took at least 15 minutes to raise me out of the manhole, the longest 15 minutes I've ever experienced before or since. A NASA photographer was on site to document the procedure of me going down into the tank. But by the time I was back on top, everything, including lights and equipment, was also completely encrusted in the mud, and he had gone. It is not customary for NASA to release pictures of this nature, but they provided a few photos to our quality and safety people. I was inspired to document the incident myself and hijacked a couple of the pictures. No one ever knew I had them until now. The quality and safety team members who were present on the night shift chose not to write an incident report. We performed our own modifications to the suit and rewrote the procedures. We passed the information on to the next day's shift, and they successfully completed the work. Although the weight testing itself was successful, the mud had corroded the tank after the residue dried. Many man-hours were spent using stainless steel brushes to remove the corrosion. Fortunately, this tank was used only for testing and was not intended for a flight. This was the first close call of my career, but not the last. It made me realize how hazardous our work was and reinforced the importance of always being vigilant. By the way, for performing this risky mission, I received an extra 50-cent an hour nighttime differential.
I wanna be a double dog daredevil headed on up to the sky, living like a comic book hero that's not afraid to die or fly high.